And so, okay, yeah. So one of the things we try to do is to pray with film. Yeah, and usually we pose these questions for everyone as they begin to reflect after they've watched the film. These are very broad questions, especially, related to the Catholic social teachings, the 10 that you saw in the page before, to do with dignity. Let me share that again, dignity of the human person, with work, with creation, with common good, and so forth. So what is it that you saw in the film that relates to the CSTs? And more importantly, do you see aspects of the film and the CSTs being reflected in our society today? So taking it from the film to where we live. Yeah, think about your experience. Yeah, and so we are very fortunate for this particular panel discussion to have, as I mentioned already, 4 special guests. And we have another educator, Roxanne, who is our moderator for this session. So at this point, let me hand it off to the very capable hands of Roxanne to lead the panel discussion.
Okay, thanks so much, Winifred. And hi, everyone. Hi, good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon to the panelists, depending on where you are. My name is Roxanne, like what Winifred mentioned, and I'm an educator. So I'm teaching currently at Catholic Junior College. I've been teaching there for about 9.5 years already, right? So I'm really quite excited to be moderating this panel discussion, especially on a topic that is like so close to home, right? So maybe just to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit. I mean, for those of us in the Zoom chat, if you want to kind of switch on your webcam and just join us, right? Feel free to do so. If you have questions for our panelists tonight, please feel free to unmute yourself, and you can actually just introduce yourself and pose a question for the panelists. And if you're not so comfortable with unmuting yourself, feel free to always just type in the chat, okay, like the questions that we have. So perhaps a question for the audience to all think about. I think given that you've just watched the entire film, I'm sure all of us in the panel over here will be quite interested in hearing some of your thoughts and your opinions about the film first. So perhaps if you can, if you'd like to, can I invite you guys to perhaps share, like, do you think that watching this film has actually changed your impression of how learning in school should be like for our children, right? So if you have any thoughts on this, perhaps you can share it. If not, you can type it in the chat. And I think while we are waiting for different responses, I see that Sharon has already posted a couple of questions that she's really eager to ask. So while I give everyone in the room some time to think about it, perhaps I'll just read out some of the questions, right? For Sharon, I think that for the panelists, I think this is more directed to Shuling. Perhaps the questions are, how did you manage to convince Macy and the school to be featured? And how long was the research, or how long did it take to finalize the plan on focusing on Damien and Macy? Yeah.
Thank you so much for your question. Well, a little bit of background. Macy and I actually went to Northwestern University together, and we were friends before we decided to embark on this project together. So we just happened to be having lunch at Little India together, and Macy had, just come back from studying education systems around the world, and she was very excitedly sharing with me about tutoria, what she had discovered in Mexico, and how she was planning to try tutoria in a Singapore school. And having not quite enjoyed my own primary and secondary school experience, the notion of somebody trying to come into a Singapore classroom to build stronger relationships between students, between teachers, and building that kind of love for learning, I think it was very exciting for me. So I was like, hey Macy, can I just document your journey, right? I promise this is not going to be like a news piece where I parachute in for an hour and pick out 3 sound bites. I'm gonna involve you in the process very actively, and we'll create something good together, and I'm sure we'll all learn something together. As far as picking Damien goes, we worked with the teachers. So Macy worked with a team of math teachers at Churchill Secondary School. to identify a couple of potential students. And what stood out about Damien to us was he had a good demeanor, kind heart. He comes from a non-traditional family, and also he was willing to allow us to follow him with cameras for a while. So yeah, and Macy, jump in if you want to add anything.
Yes, Macy, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Hi, Roxanne.
Hi.
Hi. We went to school together. So, I mean, not much to add. I think just reading, Teresa, who your reflection too, just really wanting to re-examine, how, like, what are we doing in education and what are we trying to create? And I think many teachers do this, and I think many teachers think about this work. So I think it's, in a sense, not new. And I think in some of the most beautiful, like, stretching moments of our lives when we were actually transformed by what we learned, I think we were trying to get that to be more routine in our Singaporean schools, given just the labels often that are thrown around, given the kinds of systems, right, that we've created, and the kinds of narratives about learning that we have. And so I think, grateful to this opportunity to be here and to share, and grateful to Shuling and Lisa for embarking on this journey together.
Thanks, Shuling. Thanks, Macy. I think when I was watching the film, right, something that really kind of obviously resonated with me as an educator was obviously the emphasis on relationships. I mean, the entire title is tutorial relationships, right, that foregrounded in all the lessons. And I'm quite curious, Macy, I mean, I think in your experience with tutorial, what made you so inspired by it, such that you felt that this is something that was so, I think, pivotal to introduce to the Singapore education system?
I think for me, when I first was in Mexico, and I went through the Singapore system myself, right? And I guess a lot of us did here. And I never felt like anyone really believed that I could learn. And what I mean by that is that, like, okay, like, sure, just like make sure you remember this, make sure you pass your test, make sure you, all the things, like copy down quickly, write the notes and all of that. But no one really actually sat down with me and made me feel like it was okay to be unsure about something, but yet have this like deep trust that I will get there without kind of judgment, right? That really upheld, thinking about the 10 principles again, like that held me in with that kind of dignity, right? As a learner. Only when I went to Mexico, when we were doing just a very simple problem in fractions, and a young person was my first sort of tutor, and had pushed me about like what is actually like the division of fractions, right? Like, in school they asked me, okay, you just like flip lah, right? And then you just cancel, right? But like what is actually trying to understand what divisions of fractions is, and this is like a Sec 1 topic, right? Or primary school even, but really truly believe that I could reason and I could think and I could try to understand what dividing fractions was. Really just changed me. And prior to Mexico, I was actually teaching at Northlight School in Singapore, and felt like that I want others, in my home country to experience that kind of dignity, that kind of solidarity, that kind of community as well.
Thanks, Macy. I mean, I think you're really looking at what it means to recognize or to see the individual, right, and the whole person in the classroom. And I hear words like the dignity and being able to trust that this person is capable of learning in some way. I'm curious to actually hear from the educators on our panel. Also, perhaps like Dr. Wu, Lindy, what are your thoughts about tutorial relationships, and how do you think that they can be sustainable in the Singapore education system?
Shall I go first again? Okay, I think I really loved the film, and it hit a chord with many things that I've experienced myself. I think the idea of the dignity of the student is wonderful. I wrote, when Mechi said dialoguing with students, and I think many a time it doesn't happen. The teacher speaks, the student listens, takes notes, etc., etc. Where is the time to question, and so that we can, really follow where they are in their learning, right? So I think that's really wonderful, and it shouldn't be something that is done outside of class time. I think it'd be wonderful if it was part of the school system, and not just for an NT class or students who are weak, but really this is something that we need to have. This ability to dialogue with our students needs to be done with all our students, right? I was quite fortunate to take a course with the RSA, and one of the things that I studied was this idea of learning to learn, slightly different aspect of what tutorial is, but I think it's still the same idea in a sense of taking charge of your own learning, right? Understanding how the different students learn. We all learn slightly differently, but being able to have the power to shape our own learning. And I was always bad in math. Math is not one of my things. And I always tell my husband, if only someone had understood how I needed to learn math, I would be a much better math student. I didn't see the relevance of math when I was in school. And only years later in my adulthood, I watched a movie, a TV series called Numbers, where it's this crime fighting thing, and they use math, and they catch bad guys. And I went like, wow, if I knew that when I was in school, I would have paid so much more attention to math. And for me, learning is relevance, right? And if I could have seen the relevance, I would have done so much more. So there were so many things that I watched it several times, and I was taking notes, and it took me a long time to put ideas together, because I think there were just so many things that struck many chords in me. Yeah. Minion?
Thanks.
Let me unmute myself. So congratulations, Shuling and Macy. That was a wonderful film. I enjoyed it very much. And I think it's really not easy in Singapore to get a camera into a school and spend a long time in a school. I think that is really, really very difficult to negotiate. And I would love to actually hear how you negotiated that to make it happen. Okay, so I had several thoughts. What I was really enjoyed seeing was kind of a shifting of power, right? From being a non-knowledgeable person to becoming a knowledgeable person who can teach. And that's very enjoyable to see, that Damien could be a teacher, that they could be each other's teacher. There were other moments that really touched me. One of the moments was when the Supremes, I call them the Supremes, I can't remember what they were called, the girls, the singing girls, right? And then one of them said, oh, I really want to sing, and I want to be, and it struck me that what our recording progress. What were they called? Supreme something.
Supreme Crew.
Supreme Crew. Oh yeah, Supreme Crew. The Supreme Crew. And what struck me was that there's actually another kind of learning that happens organically, that happens with kids being really interested in something, and that's singing, that's something, and that the education system doesn't have time to allow room for these kinds of talents and these kinds of knowledge to shine. or for these kids to be teaching each other their version of knowledge, right? So what I was also curious in your process in thinking about this, because what the kids were teaching each other were essentially school knowledge, like how to do math, how to do, and so on. So where did you see that? So I'm curious about moments where they were teaching non-school knowledge. Could they teach it? Did you see them teaching each other non-school knowledge where they could even be like more expert than any of us, right? Because there are certain areas where they know how to do certain things, they know how to do much more than us. So I was curious about what you saw of that. And I was really curious about how you got into the school and got the agreement of the teachers. Oh, I got so many thoughts. Okay, one more thought before the other thought is everybody was basically nice. There weren't even the teachers who were a little bit against, was only just a little bit against, and everything was framed in a very polite and nice way. Were there tensions that you left out, or was it consciously leaving out certain things? So everybody was nice. It was a very gentle film in a sense. So I was curious about that.
An interesting question, Shuli.
All right, where do I begin? I think we were really fortunate to have the support of the principal at that time, Mr. Chia. I believe Mr. Chia and Macy had worked together at Light previously. And so he also has a heart for students who are on the margins, and he really believed in the work that Macy was doing. So we basically had meetings with Mr. Chia and Macy in the room, to let know the intentions, and we made sure that our process was pretty inclusive as well. So for example, when we were halfway through the editing process, it took us 1.5 years to edit this film. We actually rented out an auditorium and screened a work in progress cut to the participants of the film. Invited everyone to come and give feedback and let us know if they felt accurately and fairly represented. And then from there, we went back to the edit room to make changes. So hopefully this has helped, I think, build that trust from the initial meetings for folks to say, yes, I want to participate, right? What were your other questions? Right.
Shirley, were the kids involved in the feedback process?
Were the kids involved in the feedback process? Yeah. So initially we met with their parents without cameras and all that first. We wanted to show just a 3-minute clip of an example of what the scenes would look like and why we wanted to do this film. And the parents and the students themselves were sitting with us at these meetings. And yeah, same thing in the post-production process. We did send work in progress first to get feedback as well. And fortunately, we're really heartened to hear at the world premiere at the Singapore International Film Festival in 2019, for example, some of the students came up to us and said, I had no idea how much our teachers really cared for us in the classroom. And they finally got to see behind the curtain all the discussions and hard work that the teachers put in for them. So that's really moving for us.
Thank you so much, Shuling. I can hear behind the scenes there was really a lot of the capture. Obviously the film didn't capture all moments, right? And there was clearly a lot of hard work that was also put in to build the trust and the relationships with all the participants as well. I think there's a question actually from I'm not sure, Tiger, Tyrone, and someone. You've raised your hand. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Girly. My husband is Tyrone. So thank you, Roxanne, for giving me this chance. But I just wanted to comment about that this film is actually a gift. And I would like to commend because it resonates and it validates, because I am a mother of 4. So I am a working mom. I'm a full-time. I am a missionary primary as a Catholic missionary, and I work on the side to fund my mission activities, and it validates my belief because we just arrived in Singapore 13 years ago. So the type of learning is what we kept on challenging and instilling in our kids, that it shouldn't be confined in a four wall of the classroom. You know, as a Catholic, as a Christian, you have to defy the status quo and be able to instate the dignity and the love of learning. It can't be always by the book, but at the same time, you always have to give more and to do more, because the action and the reality of life outside the world, it's not all about you getting something, a good grade, but it's about collaboration so that you could bring something good out of another person. And what I have drawn from the film is that vulnerability, Meishi, you know, you could have landed into a good paying job, and schooling, you might have done something which will really pay you more, but actually you went beyond and tried to challenge a maybe 50-40 year kind of thinking in schooling, and that is phenomenal. That's the gift. And right now we are lack of people who wanted to be vulnerable, who wanted to be criticized, who wanted to challenge the norm without sometimes being pragmatic. And that for me, during the film, you know, I have my Coke on hand because I thought that this will just be light. But I cried from the very minute that they've shown the reality of things. I started to cry and I said, oh my gosh, this could be a pandemic stress. But no, it just resonates with us and it validates the thing that, and I always keep on instilling, and I will continue to instill into my kids that yes, you get good grades, but at the same time, you have to think about something beyond the society. And it's so beautiful, you know, it's just resonates to what we Catholics and Christians embrace in our life, that it's beyond me. So I just wanted to, I hope that this film will reach so many people, so many students, so that, you know, we could build small kids, small learners who will not just follow the rules, but who will flourish and bloom in order to save and give hope to a soul. So that's the reason why it's just so beautiful. You know, I will definitely watch it all over again. So it's just more of my appreciation to you, Shuling and Meishi. God bless you more. I hope you will all of this, and to CFF and everyone behind the scene. Oh my gosh, what a gift. You are a gift. So I couldn't just, you know, stop myself not to share it to everyone, because I have a, you know, I have an express student, a child. My first child is on express stream, and then I have a primary 4, and I have a nursery 2, and I have a kindergarten 2. And I would like them to remember this film of something that, you know, the reality of life. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this. It was really phenomenal for me too. It's amazing. So that's it. There's no question. It's more about thanking God for sharing your gift and for sharing your talent for something that is really worthwhile, that will impress on so many parents and so many students' lives from now on and beyond. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tyrone and Gali, for sharing that. It's, you know, those encouragements that help us, or help me. I'll just talk about myself. I remember that this work is worth doing. I think, you know, Yin Yin, your question about tensions, right? I feel like the whole thing was a tension. I feel it was like a daily tension. I mean, I felt that. I mean, I felt in my body, right? Like when, oh man, like we're doing this TR stuff, and you know, we're all like, oh, like love learning, and then like, but my butt is on the line, right? Or our teachers' butts are on the line if like their mid-year exams, right? So it was like the whole thing. I think, just reflecting it, it was like sort of a deep tension that we on one hand have to are trying to intervene in a system that we have still yet to be a part of, right? And yet I think it is insufficient to, do, and I love after school programs, don't get me wrong, but I think it's insufficient. Like I think Lindy, you mentioned this, it's insufficient to not intervene in places that are otherwise harmful for our young people. I have so many colleagues who, it's like too hard to, be a teacher, be in the system, and like it's much easier to do like, like CC, CCA pro CCA, right? And like brilliant moments happen there, but I think to try to intervene in these structures felt like a lived tension always for me, and I think we had to try to navigate like, okay, how do we like shift the timetables, right? So that this kind of learning could actually like to actually think through some of the structural things. But I felt like the whole time we were like, okay, let's try this. Like which topics should we select? Because we can't go like too far out of the too far out of the box kind of a thing. So I think that hopefully people saw that in the film too, that we were really wrestling through the process. And I think just in terms of like the question around like students' versions of knowledge and whose knowledge counts, right? I think we're also trying to, it was an uphill sort of, I don't know, tension again, right? Like one of the things, kind of the furthest we could go was that like math is relative, right? Even if, it's a question about two people, one person takes 3 hours to paint a wall, another person takes 3 hours to paint a wall. If you put them together, like how long will they take to paint the wall? Like maybe they might talk to each other, like, and then like you can't, it's like math is, and how do we round out math with these like human ways of understanding the world? I think was one of the things. But then also some of the things that we had young people start to teach about based on their interest. And this was at the Sec 2 and Sec 3 sort of level. So there's one student that was really all about electric bicycles. And I guess a couple, 7 years ago, that was very new. But just about how all he understood about the different kinds of power packs and the batteries, and he just loved like electric bicycles, and so we got him to kind of design some work around that, and they did that with the cycling club. Another one, I always talk to Shuling about this girl who was like, every time in math class she was just like wouldn't say anything. But when I actually got to talk with her, she knew like was an avid reader of like 5,000 years of Chinese history, right? And like you would never know that if we didn't have that dialogue, if we didn't actually spend time with each other. I think in Thailand, we've been able to be a little bit more expansive in this regard, where we actually went to walk lands with families and think about what are important, who's the soil scientist, right? In our neighborhood, who's the uncle, right? Who knows the different herbs or the ways to understand components and acidity and alkaline nature of soil. Like how can we evolve them as part of teaching and learning in school? We had young people who were avid trap fishers, who even talked about, village games or like even volleyball to design lessons, and they would actually teach their teachers on these topics too, and try to expand kind of the bounds of what is allowed forms of making sense of the world, or what counts as science, what counts as math. And we've been able to do that in small ways in Singapore, but I think really drawing from this experience at Suchin to think about family and community-based knowledges as part of teaching and learning is actually fundamental to our survival as a species right now, and that the ways that we're teaching currently is insufficient to help us think about what it means to have food security, right, in the future, to actually think about climate change, to think about these different wicked problems. Like, we need other forms of knowledge. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Roxanne, if you don't mind, could I
Yeah.
see up on that? I think
Sure,
we
go
talked
ahead.
about the idea of integrating it more in school. And I was wondering, with your experience in the different schools in the different countries, how far, has there been a school that's actually integrating it into its main program rather than having it as a side program? Because, of course, when I was watching it, there were points when I felt a little triggered whenever there was resistance. And, it was a reminder of perhaps experiences that I've had in school as well. You think you've got a great idea, you think it's really great for the students, and then someone says, look, we don't have time because there's content to be covered. We can't do this because there are results. Will it get good results? Will it better the results? Those kinds of questions, right? But I'm wondering whether, in your experience, and to be fair, I mean, I have to say I understand where they're coming from as well. Everyone's got limited time, and a teacher's job is tough enough. We bring marking back every day. Oh, I've left those days behind, but I remember what that was like, right? You bring marking home every day with you, and then you're so tired, and then you bring it back to school, and then it just snowballs. So it's going to be difficult if you don't give the teachers time, if there isn't support, if exams are not different. But I'm wondering, can we learn from another country? Has it been done somewhere else that we could possibly learn from?
Yeah, and I think briefly, so I think Thailand, we've had schools. I guess when I think about it, it's not an add-on, in the sense like this is like core to how we're understanding teaching and learning. So there are a couple of schools in Thailand, particularly the urban indigenous school that I've sort of grown up with since I was 12 or so, that I've been able to go back and do similar tutorial work, that is, integrated into all the different subjects, and like has, from primary 4 to about secondary 6, in the Thai education system. At the same time, like, I think tutoria is a kind of practice that isn't how to say, like, it doesn't repeat the kinds of one-way thinking of that is common in education, right? So like, you can integrate it with lecture, you can integrate it with different things, and it isn't like tutoria or nothing else kind of a thing. And so I think, so when I think about integration, it's not that we use tutoria all day, every day, but I think that it's a core fundamental belief and practices, and it's integrated and thought through as like a trajectory, right, of learning across different subjects is what we've done in Thailand, at least in large urban school settings. In Mexico, they've had incredible success now. The work in Mexico is in about 35,000 schools all across the country, and primarily in smaller rural communities. And so in urban schools, I think like the work in Thailand and also Singapore has been quite an advancement in how like tutoria has been implemented across different places.
Thanks so much, Macy. And thanks, Mindy, for your question. I think given the amount of time that we have, we probably have some time to take the remaining 2 questions that were asked in the chat. So I think the first question is from Macy, from Teresa. So I think she's really curious, do you still keep in touch with the class? Because she really, I think, really like Damien and the Supreme Crew. So I think maybe the audience is also asking, like, do you still know right now what's up with Damien and the Supreme Crew? Did the Supreme Crew actually make it in some way? Yeah, so that's the first question, I think, for Macy. And I think maybe the last question is really for everyone on the panel, from Marie, which is, what advice do you have for students who are considered unteachable by Singapore's educational standards? Yeah, so Macy, maybe you first. Like, do you still know what's happening with Damien and the crew?
Yeah, I don't know if is Damien here. Maybe I don't know if Lisa. Anyway, I think the film, just talking about the gift of film, right? And I think the film is really a kind of offering, and is a gift in terms of bringing the Supreme crew and Damien back together to watch it when it first premiered too. And yes, like we're Instagram friends, you know, and we stay in contact. And you know, some have finished poly, some, you know, as Damien has already started working. Damien, if you're here, please say hello. Yeah, it's been good to see the long trajectory of things, right?
Wonderful, thanks. And I think that's also the beauty of technology and social media at this point in time, right? Like, that we are also here in spite of COVID. We have the luxury of actually being able to watch this film the Supreme crew are up to. Yeah. So maybe just a last question from the panelists. What advice do you have for the students who are unteachable by Singapore's educational standards? Would anyone? Yan Yan, would you like to go first?
I just think it's just not that important. I mean, I think it's the world is a lot bigger, and then I think it's about I think there's so many different ways to be, especially now, there's just so many different ways to be successful in life. I think just getting bad grades is just not that important.
Thank you.
I think
So it's about redefining success.
When you talk about 21st century competency, so everybody knows that the key thing is, do you know how to create? Do you know how to think? Do you know how to collaborate? These are the key things. So if you know these things, I think the grades are not that important.
Well, I think if someone tells you that you are unteachable, really you should look at it the other way. They don't know how to teach you, because I don't think anybody is unteachable. So find someone who understands you and who can teach you what you need to learn.
Thank you. Shuling?
Yeah, to piggyback off the answers, I agree. You know, it's not that you failed in the system, but the system has failed you. Essentially, follow your passions. Your grades do not define who you are. The world is so much greater than that. Yeah.
Thank you. And Macy, maybe last words from you.
Yeah, I mean, I echo all the sentiments. I think especially in these times that we're in, like especially this time in human history, like we need other forms of knowing. Otherwise we're like not gonna be able to survive like the next 100, 500 years. And so I think the fact that an elder, Roger Fernandez, said this to me before, and our school systems teach us how to all know the same, be the same, do the same, right? But that also teaches us that we don't need each other. And I think we need to know differently and to expand the forms of knowing, and also understand like the failures of the system itself. If we're actually gonna try to create a more diverse, a more loving world where we understand that we do really need each other in a deep, deep way.
Thank you. And I think hearing from all of you panelists for this last question really reminds me of the larger purpose of education, right? I think you've spoken to the heart of education, which is that it's really not about the content, which so many Singaporeans or Singapore teachers also, you know, I think I'm guilty at times of being overly preoccupied by that in when there is so little time, but really looking at what it means to know who you are, to know what you are worth, and what you are capable of, such that our students don't grow up thinking that they have failed, but rather thinking of new ways actually that they can encounter themselves and they can encounter other people, such that it will be a better community also. You know, so thank you so much, Macy, Shuling, Lindy, Yan, for your time. I think there are quite a lot of questions and comments, I think, in the chat for Macy and for everyone. So unfortunately, we only have this amount of time. So I'm just gonna wrap up, and I think thank you once again for your time, and I'll pass the time over to Winifred, I think, to close off the entire session. So Winifred.
Do you mind if I give a quick acknowledgement?
Thank you so much.
Well,
yeah,
Winifred.
so to everyone, you know, especially
sorry, Winifred, I think Shuling wants to say something. I think Shuling wants to say something.
Just wanna give a quick acknowledgement to the team who put a lot of work over the 7 years that it took to make this film. Producer Lisa Tay, your friends in Neon, we just went through this together. And then our editor, Mirabelle Ang, she cut down 120 hours of footage into the 77-minute film. And our executive producer, Tan Pin Pin, who gave us so much really sound advice.
Is it just me?
Am I breaking up?
I think it's your signal.
Okay. All right, I'll put it in the chat. Thanks.
Thanks, Shuling. Winifred, is your connection okay now?
It looks like Winifred's a bit frozen on the screen.
Yes, I think so. Perhaps in the meantime, do take some time to just kind of read through the remaining comments in the chat. We'll see whether Winifred is coming back. Okay, so I am not sure if Winifred is coming back, but feel free to stay behind. Perhaps, given that we have a little bit more time since Winifred is not here, if there is anything that you would like to say to the rest of the panelists, feel free to.
Shuling and Macy, there's one part that made me break out laughing, which is the sleeping during exams part. That there's a chair in the corner with a sign that said, stay awake or something? So is sleeping during exams a big problem? Is that what it is?
That's funny. I think the students were taking the exams in a classroom that's used every day. That one particular teacher just had that chair in the corner. I think that's where he sends students. Yeah, it stuck out to me, so I had to get a shot of it. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if people feel this way, but like watching the film reminds me of our days in school.
Sorry.
Hi, Win.
Hi, Winifred. Welcome back. I think Macy was just commenting on the stay awake chair.
Hi, sorry. I was about to speak and then, yeah, thank you so much, for everyone. And I'm so sorry, I couldn't hear quite a lot of what Shuling was saying. Suddenly my internet was wonky. Yeah, you can't rely on this all the time, and because there's a lot of rain and thunder and lightning outside. But I would like to thank all 4 of you for taking the time to join us and for having such a wonderful discussion, and also to thank all of you who joined us for the panel discussion to really engage with the material, the film, as well as with the topic and all of us here. So this is what makes the film festival a lot more interesting and meaningful to all of us. So have a good evening, and we encourage you to sign on to the other films. Prasad, can I get your help to post the links on in chat for those of you who would like to find out more about the other remaining 6 films that we have online? Now, for those of you who are, following us with Kena Film Fest, it's unfortunate that, we had to only do the 7 that we had available online. But we will, make plans once things improve to screen more of the films, either physically or in the cinema, and even do repeat screenings of Unteachable as well. All right, so we hope to see everyone, more people join us. Like many of you have said, that it should reach to greater audiences as well as to many schools. Yeah, so we hope that through this opportunity, we can increase the number of people who understand how, education can be taught differently. Yes, so, yes, okay, and I can see more coming, Prasad, do you have all the various links? If not, maybe we can go to the...
Already posted in the chat.
Okay, for the various other films?
Hi,
Okay.
hi, Prasad. I think you only sent it to me. You
Oh.
need to send it to everyone.
Okay. Yes, I'm posting it now.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. All right. So, thank you. We've actually taken a lot longer than I thought we would. So it shows the level of interest and engagement with the topic and with the panelists. So have a good evening, and hopefully see you all in the other screenings that are coming up for the rest of the week. Thank you. Now I know that we were hoping to see whether you all would mind turning on your video so Prasad can take a group shot. For those of you who can and with us, would you turn on your video so that Prasad can take a screenshot with all of us? Yay, very nice. Come, more. Don't worry if you're in your PJs, it's only the face.
Okay.
Hello, come on, everyone.
Okay, still. Anyone else?
No, so many black.
Okay, so I'll take it now. Okay.
Okay, whoever is here, yeah.
Smile. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, all right. Thank you all very much. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you, Winifred, for organizing this. Thank you.
No, not at all.
Bye.
Thanks, Roxanne,
Thank you so
for
much.
hosting this with us. See you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Nice to see you again, Macy.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
So well, friends.
Hi, everyone. Thank you
Hi,
for
Mr.
joining.
Pinto. Ping, I think.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, whew, done.
Okay lah, done lah. Hey, you're
Okay,
internet.
Isabel and Priska, how was it?
Isabel, you're mute.
Stop. You want me to stop recording? Stop recording.
Ah.
I stop recording.